Pierce here with Electric Bike Report, and today we have the Surface604 Quad. This is an intermediate level mountain bike that is one step above the Shred that you may have seen our review of already. They've taken a lot of time to make a really cool looking frame, give you quality components, and make sure this bike can rip those simple trails and OHV roads that you're looking to go explore. I'm going to go in depth on all the cool things about this bike and how they perform, so let's get on with it. Surface604 has designed the Quad to be an intermediate level mountain bike, and there are a few key components that make it that way. I'm going to start off with this frame. This is made out of 6061 alloy, and this X-Wing crossbar thing it has going on is super unique, and I really like the way it looks. It is very refreshing to see something that is distinguishable from the other bikes in its price point, so kudos to 604 for that one. When it comes to your electrical components, you have a 500 watt rear hub motor that's made by Bafang that they've actually upgraded a little bit to reduce vibration. It feels almost as smooth as your mid-drive motors from Bosch and Yamaha, and that's saying a lot considering it's a rear hub motor. It engages consistently, quietly, and I always know how much it's gonna punch regardless of the assistance level I'm in, which I really appreciate in these off-road conditions here, so I know how the bike is going to react. They have that rear hub motor hooked up to a torque sensor, and that's one of the reasons this bike is so consistent below you. It knows how much effort you're putting in, and so it knows exactly how much effort to give back to you as the rider. You have a 48 volt battery that's 14 amp hours. That's actually upgradable to a 20 amp hour battery if you want to do so at checkout with Surface604. We'll be going into details on how this battery range lasted in our range test section, so be sure to stay tuned for that. It did pretty well. So one of my favorite parts about this mountain bike is its tires. These Maxxis Rekon tires are not only good looking, they're really high performance from what I've seen too. They're 2.8 inches wide, and that profile is really good for being a versatile tread pattern and width regardless of the terrain that you're on. If you're on sand or gravel, it's going to float over the top. If you're on hard packed dirt, those side knobs are going to make sure you have traction on the corners. Not to mention their gum wall, which is refreshing to see, and it matches the gold orange aesthetic of this bike very well. I think Surface604 did a really good job choosing the minute little details on this bike, from the colors to the components. It adds up really nicely. You have a display on here that's 3.5 inches wide. It's made by Surface604, and it's going to tell you everything that you need to know about this bike. You have your speed, trip miles, total miles, how much work the battery is doing as far as wattage, all the stuff that you need to know when you're out there riding. Your suspension fork is a Suntour XCM 32 millimeter. Essentially, it's a spring fork. It gets the job done and has an adjustment for a lockout as well. So if you're on-road riding, you can lock that baby out and then have the most efficiency you can when pedaling. They offer a RockShox Judy upgrade, which is an air fork. If you're looking to do more off-road riding with the Quad, I would definitely recommend spending the extra money to get the air fork. It's going to really make this bike capable in those off-road situations. When it comes to the drivetrain on the Quad, you have the SRAM X5 derailleur with a 9-speed cassette, and I find this gives me a really good range, especially with that off-road riding. You have a very nice climbing gear on this bike, and you also have a hard enough gear to really open up on the straightaways and downhills. Usually with bikes around this price point, I'm used to seeing the 7-speed drivetrains, so having the 9-speed drivetrain was really refreshing, and it really helped the performance on this bike overall. Not to mention, they've made this thing gold, not to be confused with an XX1 drivetrain, but it is still SRAM, and they've also put a gold chain on it here too. Visually, it's appealing. Performance-wise, it checks all the boxes for me, and I think they chose the right thing for the job. When it comes to your brakes, you have Tektro Dorado hydraulic disc brakes. And similar to the Shred, these are one of my favorite parts of these Surface604 mountain bikes. They grab hard, there's a lot of modulation, and you have a lot of confidence going into the corners with these things because you know exactly how they're going to react. Aside from that, you have a headlight made by Bushell. It's 120 lumens, and it does a good job staying in place and emitting the path in front of you. If you do plan on doing a lot of night riding, I would definitely advise getting a secondary light for your helmet or your handlebar. But when it comes to you being seen by others in low light conditions and maybe getting you home in the dark, it does a good job overall. Your saddle is this Velo saddle here that's very performance oriented. It has a nice leather look and feel to it, and I've had no complaints so far, and I've ridden this bike quite a bit. There are a few more things like our leather grips here. While these grips do add to the looks of the bike, I would like to have something a little bit more rubbery and tacky. Just because it is a mountain bike, you really do need to make sure you're holding on, and these grips aren't the grippiest, you could say. They are comfortable, they do look good, but something more rubbery, more tacky would definitely suit this bike a lot better for what it's intended for. As a full package, this bike really rips, and I think anyone who's looking for that light to casual trail riding, exploring OHV and forest roads, and just wanting to cruise around with something that's capable is really going to appreciate what the Quad has to offer. You're gonna get a lot of questions about what that bike is because of how cool it looks, and you're also going to get a lot of jaws dropped by how fast you're gonna be shredding the trails. We tested the Quad on every type of terrain we could find, from single track to gravel to slick rock to paved trail. And the Quad handled it all and really shined once off-road. Because of the motor's power, we were able to climb the steepest of hills and keep our speed regardless of the terrain we were on. The torque sensor also gave us the right amount of power and engagement the second we needed it, which really helped out loads with steep climbs and technically challenging terrain. The Maxxis Rekon 2.8-inch wide tire kept us stuck to the ground and plowed through rocks and dirt with ease. The 100mm Suntour suspension fork helped us stay in control and comfortable when things got tough. Because of the mountain bike geometry, 100mm of suspension, and the 2.8-inch wide tires, the Quad handles great, especially if you're looking to do all-terrain biking. Those wanting an even higher performance Quad have the option to upgrade the suspension fork to a RockShox Judy Air Fork, which will provide a more plush feel and a wider range of adjustment from rider to rider. We tested the maximum range of the Quad to see how long the battery would last if we were in the lowest assist level while pedaling the whole time. After 4.5 hours of pedaling, we finally reached the end of the battery life at 63.74 miles. Our test rider was also cruising at an average speed of 13 miles per hour overall, which is respectable considering the chunky tire tread and the lowest assist level being used. As far as minimum range goes, we already had a good idea of how far the Quad would get thanks to its brother, the Shred. Both of these bikes use the same 500-watt motor and 14-amp-hour battery. You can expect at least 30 miles of riding on the Quad when using full assist.
Alrighty guys, and now we are back to our favorite hill, this 12% grade hill here, and we are going to see how this Surface 604 Quad can tackle the hill. The Shred, if you watched that review, did a pretty good job, but it did struggle a little bit when it came to the throttle only. It did make it to the top, but our lowest speed was around 3 miles per hour on that Shred. Because these bikes are similar, I'm very curious to see how they stack up against one another on this hill. Let's see how it goes. So we just did the hill test. I'm feeling pretty good because this thing actually flew up the hill. On our throttle only, we got 1 minute and 46 seconds and our top speed was 20 miles per hour. We didn't dip below 5 miles per hour at our lowest speed. The lowest speed was around 5.2 miles per hour. When it came to the pedal assist level 5 on this hill, holy cow, we have our first under 1 minute time. I got 58 seconds on this, and my top speed was 21 miles per hour, and my lowest speed was 15.1 miles per hour. So this thing can seriously tackle some serious hill climbs. I think it did a really good job. You shouldn't have any issues climbing hills on the Surface 604 Quad. So now it's time to see how fast this Quad is on our 100-yard dash test. As you may have guessed from the title, we have cones set up on a 100-yard stretch of trail here, where we're going to be seeing how fast this bike is in 3 different settings. The first setting is throttle only to see how fast the bike is without you helping at all. The second setting is going to be max pedal assist, so it's a combo of you working and the bike working. Last but not least, we're going to have the bike turned off and see how fast I can do this 100 yards just on manpower. After all of this, we should have results that really show you how fast the bike is in all of these settings and how much that motor is truly doing for you. So let's get on it. Alrighty guys, so I just finished up my 100-yard dashes. For the throttle only, I got 13.1 seconds. For the pedal assist level 5, I got 12.5 seconds. So about a half a second, little over a half a second difference there. And when it came to the bike being completely off, I got 17.3 seconds. Honestly, this bike wasn't as hard to pedal as I was expecting it to be with it off. Obviously, it was noticeably different. But what I gathered from that 100-yard dash is if you did need to pedal this bike home without a charge, you're still going to be able to do so. Overall, I think this bike is decently fast compared to other 500-watt motorbikes, where the difference I find is how smooth it feels when you're pedaling or using the throttle with how smooth that hub motor engages. So it might not be the fastest, most powerful bike out there, but when it comes to smoothness and consistency, it checks all the boxes for me. Okay, so if you're paying attention during our spec part of the review, you'll know that I really like these Tektro Dorado disc brakes. They come with 180mm rotors, and like I mentioned, they are hydraulic, so the stopping power is going to be there. These brakes are also on the Surface 604 Shred. When we tested those brakes, we averaged 15 feet 11 inches for how long it took us to brake. This quad has a slightly longer wheelbase, and I'm really wondering, with the same brakes, same size motor, and the same speed, how much different our results are going to be for the quad as compared to the Shred. So without further ado, let's find that out. Alrighty guys, so as you can see, these Tektro Dorado brakes work really well, and our results were very similar to the Shred, which I was kind of anticipating considering it's the exact same brake setup. So we are actually 2 inches shorter on our average than we were on the Shred. We got 15 feet 9 inches as our average. That could be attributed to a few variables: the longer wheelbase that I mentioned, perhaps a little bit meatier tread pattern on these Maxxis Rekons. But overall, between the two, they are going to be very similar, and we couldn't really place a finger on which one is going to stop faster because of how many variables are similar. The important thing is this bike can stop on a dime, and regardless of the terrain you're on, you are going to have the brakes that are going to hold up for the job. Alrighty guys, so we just finished up our day testing the Surface 604 Quad, and from my impressions, it is exactly what they say it is. It's a bike that's going to be great for light trail riding and exploring those OHV and gravel roads that you're curious about. If you add those optional upgrades, like the bigger battery and the RockShox Judy air fork, this bike can definitely turn into a more capable off-road bike, but I think it does just fine with the parts that you have on it. The Maxxis Rekon tires with that 2.8-inch wide width keep me planted, keep me stable on the corners, and just eat up everything in the path. The Suntour suspension fork, while it is a spring fork, it does provide a lot of adjustment and is a great median for on and off-road riding. This frame is super unique, and I can't get over it. I think it's one of the coolest looking frames that I've been able to ride, and it performs really well too. I think the main component that really makes this bike shine is that vibrationless 500 watt Bafang rear hub motor. This thing feels like a mid-drive motor other than where it's weighted on the bike. But when it comes to smoothness, consistency, and engagement, the torque sensor hooked up to that motor is a killer combo. So with that being said, this Surface 604 Quad is a great bike for those wanting to do a little bit more off-road riding than on-road riding, and it's gonna be good for both. As always, my name is Pierce with Electric Bike Report, and I really appreciate you guys watching and taking the time to check out our stuff. We have a more detailed written review on this quad in our description below. Be sure to check that out and leave a comment if you had any more questions we didn't answer for you. We're putting out reviews on these cool bikes as soon as we can, so be sure to hit subscribe and like the video for next time. With all of that being said, my name is Pierce, and we'll see you later.